Hi, I'm Peep, and in this episode we're going to be peeping Season 4 of Search Party.
Look at the way I walk, look at the way I talk. Where is the pepper? Cause niggas be throwing with salt. Now that I got the salt.
So Search Party, it's a show that I believe originally began on TBS and then got picked up on HBO Max for Season 3, and then they continued from there. And it's always been a show for me synonymous with just smart comedy writing, and especially as a dark comedy, because the situations, they tread along like murder and stuff. Tropes and the characters and the situation they find themselves in, it's always very enjoyable to watch, and the performances are always great. The first 2 seasons, I would say, were the most closest we got to this idea of a search party, the literal meaning. And second season, it was really interesting how they continued that aspect of it. And season 3 is more abstracted, and you kind of started to wonder, where are we going? And so, especially with where it ended at the end of season 3, before I even say it, just know this review will have spoilers. So, this is your warning. But, so click out now. I'm about to say it. She was kidnapped at the end of season 3. So, and you could kind of feel the show's tone starting to change. If it wasn't already kind of changing in season 3. I was honestly, entering season 4, was kind of worried, because not that I wasn't looking forward to seeing these fantastic characters and these fantastic performances, but I knew the tone was going to be darker. It definitely was. So HBO also dropped these episodes in little batches. It was, I think, 3 episodes here, 3 episodes there, and then ended with 4 episodes, yeah. So there was 3 drops, and I feel like there's kind of a little tonal shift between these drops, at least at certain points. So I will actually be talking about each batch, so for this review. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about this first episode drop. There's not much I will say about this drop. I definitely have so much more to say about the other 2. Something I noticed in these first 3 episodes, and when I consider the season as a whole, I feel like the pacing was just really off. I don't know. But just like, it felt so jarring. When I first watched the first 3 episodes, and I still feel this way, it felt like 2 different shows within one show, because you had the Dory storyline, which is honestly its own genre. It was like 90% thriller, maybe like a little bit of gags here and there, like 10% comedy adjacent. And then it was like 100% comedy when it came to Drew, Elliot, and Portia's stuff. As a viewer, I can't say it was a pleasant experience to go from being like so anxious that like about Dory fighting for survival and her life, and like trying to escape so many times, and then and then failing, to like a freaking hilarious Elliot scene that's like got me like belly laughing, like, and just like cracking up and can't breathe from laughter. I think it's also because these are just like such polarizing emotions. They feel like on like different sides of the emotional spectrum. So just like, I felt like emotional whiplash in like a tennis match of like, oh my god, like literally like clenching my chest to like, to laughing at like a good gag. But there were some hilarious moments. I think one of them I have to point out because it was so funny. It was so funny, and it was apparently improvised, but it was the three-way kiss, drunken kiss between the gang, which I'm gonna call them the gang in this video, because that is what Chip, who pretended to be Dory in this letter to those that trio, called them the gang. So I think I have no choice but to call them that. It's such a good name for them, I guess. And then like the drunken voicemail that, oh my god, and then they just like progressively got closer, and it just like their dynamic is like so close, and they're very close as a dynamic and as you know, a friend group, and they're so funny, and just like to see that happen was unexpected, but like so on point, is so like in character for them. I think it was so nice to have the Elliot and Portia and Drew scenes, see where they're at and what they're doing, and I feel like they're all so in character and so freaking hilarious. It warmed my soul because of how funny it was, which I definitely needed after these more darker situations and scenes with Dory. But yeah, that's actually all I have to say about this first drop. So yeah, let's just keep it going. So now on to drop number 2, which included episodes 4, 5, and 6. So I won't really recap too much, but 4th episode, we see the neighbor, stuff happens, neighbor dies. I think this is also when they begin to start to search for Dory, yeah. And then episode 5, the gang goes to, you know, what they think is the Twink's house, Chip, at like some seaport or something. And then that's also when Dory becomes mind controlled. And in episode 6, that is when Dory becomes Stephanie. And the gang goes to, I think, yeah, the Stickies factory. That's what it is. Okay, I think I did good. So now that's out of the way. First thing I want to talk about in this drop, or I just need to mention it, is I'm not even going to go into too much detail. We need to stop and pause and just realize how great of an actor Alia Shawkat is. Is it Sharkat? I'm probably gonna say Sharkat, I'm sorry. But, oh my god, in episode 4 specifically, because of such a moment for that character. This is when she gives the speech, or monologue, or whatever you want to call it, to Chip of like, I'm a bad person, I actually killed these people, like, all that. Her character just breaks down in a way that we haven't seen her. She, even at the end of season 3, was not admitting to herself that this happened. She deluded herself into thinking it. So like, for her to like burst out and finally admit it after all this, like, you know, this traumatic situation, and to just say that to Chip, god, like, oh my god, I got like chills watching it, just that breakdown. But also, there was just so much required of Alia in this season. So many emotions, so many situations. I mean, having to act like you're in a life or death situation for so much of the season, and pretending to be a whole new person, and just experience life for the first time, to also having to like act being mind control. And then of course, I mean, the next batch we'll talk about it, but just, I mean, when she was like tied to the bed, which it just goes on to like, oh my, I bet her voice just gave out. Like, I want to know, did your voice give out, Alia? Like, tell me. No ifs, ands, or buts. Like, she deserves an Emmy for this. Like, all the accolades for Alia, all the accolades, please, 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 please. Now next, I kind of want to touch on the writing. I find it interesting because this show kind of began with coming out with original content, and they kind of, you could tell they started getting inspired by other genres, and even like other media directly. Like, for example, I mean, last season they started actually more directly referencing a genre of like courtroom dramas and stuff. And then this season, I feel like not only referencing a horror thriller genre-esque mashup, but also works directly. Like, I know people took note that the kidnapping and the crazed fan aspect, that being a reference to Stephen King's Misery, but also with Chip dressing up as his aunt, like, that is very much, I mean, from like Psycho and stuff like that. So like, and I'll touch more, there's even more references also in the next batch too. You could tell that this is what the writers are interested in exploring more, is like, how can we adapt this other media that we like into the show somehow. Plot wise, and the plot lines with the mind control stuff, I think it was definitely that episode 5 in itself was definitely a tone shift, and I think a necessary tone shift. I liked episode 4 more than the first batch, but I think with episode 5 and that tone shift, I really started to like the show more. But with that being said, I don't know, I feel like I was getting plot whiplash or something, or just some kind of whiplash, I don't know what specifically, but because if you think about it, we ended season 3 with Dory deluding herself into thinking that she genuinely did not kill these people, even though her friends were like, no, you literally did, like, I feel like you believe that you don't anymore. So she started that. She deluded herself. Then we have, of course, that awakening, if you want to call it that, in episode 4 with that Emmy-deserving performance from Alia of just her admitting it, having a mental breakdown as she, and then admitting it to Chip. In the next episode, you have Dory becoming like deluded again into thinking she didn't do it from like external forces. So we went from deluded to, okay, I know I did this, to deluded again, but not by herself this time, but by Chip. And then, as we'll see, you know, in the next batch, like by the end of the season, she knows, she goes back to knowing that she did it. Like, why did we have to, like, okay, she thinks she didn't do it. Okay, she knows she did it. To, okay, she thinks she didn't do it again, and then to she like you see what I'm saying? Like, why? I don't get it. Like, especially if at the end of the season she was just going to, you know, remember that stuff again anyway. Like, why? That part just gave me a headache. That part of the plot line, I won't lie. Again, I really appreciated the tone shift in episode 5. Like, I just felt like it became a little more surprising and not as depressing of a show to watch. And so I was literally genuinely interested in this next batch. So now with the third drop. Let's start with the writing. Okay, so now poor Drew, poor Drew, oh my god. And then kind of filled like 2 with episode 9 by calling it the Inferno. I feel like that's a bit of a reference to possibly Dante's Inferno. And then with the closing episode of The Shadows, perhaps it's a bit of purgatory, especially because it is her funeral. Like, she has, and in purgatory you kind of have to, like, I guess, before you can go in either direction, I guess, oh shoot, that sounds scary. Oh, but you kind of have to confront all your qualms, address your issues in a way, so that would make sense. I just don't know why it's increasingly becoming a show specifically about Dory's psychology. I don't know. It feels random. It feels random, and it's definitely something they started establishing last season. It's not like this was completely coming out of nowhere. I mean, she was deluding herself, like as I was talking about in the last episode drop. But I feel like that's when people started questioning Dory's psychology, like towards the end of season 3, and then it's just like completely like her mind's being rearranged in this season, like I don't know, her memories are being toyed with. Like, this is probably a random tangent, I don't even know if it belongs to this section, but I just need to know, like, why, how did in the first 2 seasons it was such a tie into what the show like started as, like literally a search party to, like, they need to rename the show if they're gonna go this direction. Okay, like, okay, but we need to rename the show. Like, this is Dory's psychology, the mind of Dory. I think this show needs to be called The Mind of Dory or something. Cause just like, I feel like that's just so much of so much more of what the show is about at this point. And it seems like the writers are interested in writing about this, which again is okay. It just feels random. Like, I feel like this should have been a new show then, or something. Speaking of Dory, let's continue this Dory train, okay? The end of episode 9, The Inferno, we find out that Dory could have escaped at the beginning. She went back into the trunk. Essentially a big plot twist, right? Right before the finale. Oh my gosh. I'm conflicted. Because I don't necessarily think that's a bad idea. I just feel like it's another time where the show went darker than it needed to go. Because she remembers this, and it's the first time the audience is knowing this, but it's all in the context of her essentially dying, which in itself is already a pretty dark concept. It's already pretty dark to show our main character dying. And then to find out she could have avoided all of this if she went along with, escaping and didn't go back. So that it kind of, in a way, was of her own accord that this ended up being her path. And it gives me that same feeling that I had in the first drop when all these dark elements were first, popping up, where my stomach sank a little bit. It was heart-wrenching. It just, like, is this the feeling I want to have going to the finale? Not really. It just, like, that whole aspect, I feel like it should have been like a moment, but I think it was just, for me, it was just clouded by just the thought that it went to a much darker place than it needed to, and why did it become this dark, and why did they want it to be this dark? It's like, I know it's a dark comedy in a lot of ways, again, especially with like this topic, they're joking about, this the situation where like Dory murdered people and stuff like that. Like, it's still the comedy where all this dark stuff has happened, like, technically. But I feel like this is like the most overtly dark it's ever gotten. I just don't know about the execution. I don't know if they mixed a thriller and a comedy so well. I think it leaned too much in one direction or the other, and so it just didn't feel overall as an episode, and like, yeah, it didn't feel as enjoyable to watch because of that. I think one thing I realized in the writing too, from the season as a whole, is that I feel like the writers themselves and the writing team or whatever really enjoy thinking about big concepts, which those big concepts are what, for me up until this point, Search Party was such a smart show to watch and smart comedy because of their spin and how they would incorporate these big concepts and these themes. Like, for one, like, this season was definitely, there was two big themes in the season. It was identity and trauma. I definitely welcome them tackling these big topics and incorporating them, but I think my issue is more that it never felt like they fully committed to it, at least evenly. They put their whole foot, not even their whole foot, the whole shin in on Dory's storylines, but then they just put a little pinky toe in for like the gang. They kind of started seeing it like at the end of episode 9, when they had like this big group breakdown of like, I don't know who I am, and like, I'm a person and a person, just like that whole breakdown that's when it tied into identity. That's when they started to put the whole foot in with the gang. But because up until that point, it's just the pinky toe, It's just like, it was so uneven. Like, it just did feel like they fully committed to it across the board as a season. It just felt like specifically only in Dory's plots we're going to be touching on these themes. But if there's one thing Search Party will get right every time, and is honestly why it's still a show for me that's really enjoyable to watch, no matter where the season goes, honestly, and what keeps me anchored into the show and coming back is the characters and the writing of the characters, the performances. It's not even like it's the main characters, which we'll talk about soon, because the performances are definitely something to talk about, but it's even in the side characters. Like, the side characters are just as hilarious as the main character. Like, just even side characters we see for like 10 minutes. And I think they're so funny because they're so specific. Like, Search Party knows how to do tropes of people, like, and how, you know, to have these very specific people that like, but also like, definitely a person you have in your life. Like, for instance, I mean, it's again, it's a small character. It's definitely a very small character, but I think it was episode 5 with like the guy who was like supposed to be like their ride back or something. One thing I always remember from this guy is that his back seat is wet. Don't forget. But he's like, you know what I mean? Like, you like, I don't know, that performance, that character in itself. I know someone like that, and I feel like a lot of people know someone like that. Like, and it is so specific, like how that character was. And then also like the neighbor just like, you know, like she has like all of her allergies and like she was like, I'm very hard to keep alive. It's just like, I think that's also just so funny to explore, like that being someone who's actually one of the people being held hostage and what that would look like. Of course, the aunt. I think it's Aunt Delilah. Aunt Lila. AKA Miss Susan Sarandon. That character was so specific, like, too, because, like, she had the earpiece, and she was always talking to Richard. Oh, her baby brother was a little more than a baby brother, which is a crazy plot. You know, because that's when you find out Chip's inbred and all that. Oh my gosh, and maybe that explains a lot. And just hilarious, like, because she was very old money. Susan killed that role, let me just say that. But speaking of great performances, let's talk about these main characters. Let's talk about this is the best part of the show. This is the best part of the show, hands down. Everyone is always on their A game. But this season, we got someone, they kept saying guest starring, but it was clear that they are a main for this season, which is Cole Escala as Chip. And let's talk about this performance. It was scary good. Because this role required so much of tiptoeing on a line of being just scary and horrifying and selling the fact that, like, yeah, I don't want to cross this person, but also being funny. Like, I think if I was trapped somewhere with Chip, like, I'd be genuinely terrified. Like, he's crazy. But it's also interesting because there's also this childlike aspect to him while also being scared. I mean, I think it's truly just an insecure, like, Chip is truly just an insecure, scared little boy. Like, that's the thing, but just the places he's willing to go because of that insecurity, like, how he did all this just to feel like for once he had a friend, like. But it was definitely a villainous and deranged performance, which I've known of Cole Escala, and I've known that they're a comedian, but to see them in, you know, acting in something like outside of also the comedy genre. I mean, I checked the IMDb though, like, they've been in a bit of stuff, so I'm sure, like, they're definitely capable, but I think this is a breakout role for Cole Escala. Like, they stole the show for sure. Definitely embodied Chip. Perfect casting also because, and Susan Sarandon as Chip's aunt is also perfect casting because they actually, like, low-key, like, no, not even low-key, high-key look similar. Like, I was like, this is eerie. Like, Chip was actually really good at impersonating Aunt Lila. Like, maybe I would have been fooled, like, honestly. Oh my gosh. I've been playing around with lighting. I feel like I look kind of you know, spooky with this lighting. I couldn't record earlier in the day, so it's kind of in the evening / night. But I mean, I guess it kind of goes with the season. I look spooky. Maybe it's on brand. Another performance I have to know. And I'm gonna say it's my favorite character. And that's John Early as Elliot. Oh my gosh, like any scene, any moment that Elliot had in the season, I probably at least, you know, chuckled or like cracked up, like literally replayed it. I would replay it if it was that hilarious. I mean, especially in the earlier episodes, that was such a needed thing, because I felt like it served as a palate cleanser in a lot of ways to what was happening in the Dory storyline, and I feel like those were even some of the most funniest moments from Elliot in the season. I mean, I have to know, because oh my god, I had to run that back. Because it was so funny. The I hate gay people monologue. Oh my god, that was hilarious. And I feel like for John Early and also the writers who wrote that scene, that was for gay Twitter, and I'm happy. I don't know. I felt like I was getting gay Twitter vibes with that, you know, that whole bit, which I'm not complaining about. Like, as a bi person, that's something I've participated in, you know. Maybe I hate gay people too. I hate bi people. I hate, you know, let's go homophobia. Let's go, bring it back. And then also, I think it was in episode 7, when that call, like Elliot's face expressions, like with the call with Mark and just like the whole conversation, which is also funny in itself, because like Mark becoming a baby, like what? It was so funny. It was so funny. Very, very small subplot, but just like with like the Elliot guns, and then it's revealed that the factory blew up because all the guns went off, and then he's literally suing for and gonna win $2 million. Like, he's gonna make money off that. Oh my god, it was so funny. But Elliot wasn't the only one who liked the season, which is actually crazy, because if you actually notice, everyone in the gang like lied at least once in the season. I don't know, I feel like there was like a recurring theme of lying. Portia lied the least though, and I would say Elliot lied a little less than the previous seasons. I will say the master liar between the three of them is Drew. We gotta give it a Drew. He can lie his ass off. Let me just give an example. They were like at the seaport, and I think it was Portia or Elliot said something about like they saw a name Cindy come up as like a text message on Drew's phone. They're like, "Oh, is that your girlfriend?" And he was like, "No, oh no, that's just an app that sends you messages in case you're lonely or something. It was just that." And then Elliot was like, "No, that's literally the messages app. Like, you're gonna be like, it's your messages. It's I don't care if it ever becomes overdone, because it's so funny. It's so funny." And like John Paul Reynolds' like performance of Drew, and just especially these like that, it's so funny. Okay, this is another good one, when Cindy is talking about like she noticed that she went through his like, I guess, search history, and noticed that that Drew searches Dory every day and stuff, and so she pointed that out, and it's like, oh no, you know what, that's so weird, I think that's a preset. Like, I think that's a preset, like, that was the first thing I searched on this computer, now it just does it every day. Like, because I think it's even more funny, because like it's also, they reveal that he literally searches Dory every day and stuff, and then oh my god, Drew, I need more Drew's lies in season 5. Can we keep that? It's so good. It's so funny. Oh my god. Can we keep it as a little pet? Like, please. Like, oh my god. I believe, and we also have Meredith Hagler as Portia. She's also really good. Again, another specific trope that's hilarious all the time. And I think my favorite moment from Portia this season was, and it's very Portia. When she's when they arrived to the little Stickies factory, the lady is like, "Oh, your friend got kidnapped. That must be so hard for you." And she's just like, "Oh my gosh, like thank you for noticing. Like yeah, it's been really tough." Like I just like, but, yeah, I feel like, you know, this, you know, like, I guess, like, fake positivity, I don't know what to call it, like, it's so specific and, like, nuanced, I, like, don't know what to call it, but it's funny, it's so funny. Portia adds so much to that dynamic, too, like, too good. And before I talk about the finale, and then get into some final notes, I do want to quickly touch on the Chantel episode, because Chantel's episode was about like her finding her purpose, so she writes this book, and you know, I mean, which is, I love that we got a Chantel episode, like, and I also, like, I think that was a really nice choice, like, the fact that, you know, we don't have to include her in every episode, because she's not part of the group, like, she really isn't. She is part of the show, especially, she you know, the show started with her at the core, so we had so many interesting places. I'm also glad it was more in the comedy genre than the thriller genre that we've been seeing this season too. Again, Chantel's another specific trope. I can't even put my like tongue on it. I don't even know. Like, I think the closest I can come to describing it is like tacky rich. Wealth has been in your family for so long that you just don't have taste. You just don't know what's good. Fact that the talk show host, I forgot her name, unfortunately, but she literally was so adamant on thinking that this was like a 10-year-old girl's writing and was a 29-year-old woman. And that just goes to show Chantel's writing style and like her thought process. Oh my god. And her come on the show and then she does her own, like she does a very Chantel-esque speech. And also the fact that like the book, like the book from I think episode 3 or 4, like, you know, to tie that back in, I think was just like, there's so many good decisions in this episode. It's just like, it's such a hilarious little detour, and just, you know, yeah, a necessary like palate cleanser, and it was so funny. Now let's talk about this finale. Let's separate this out and just talk about the finale episode now. Like, I haven't really talked about each episode specifically, but I think it's the finale, we should talk about it. I've had friends who have seen the season 4 finale, and like when they found out that like I watched Search Party, they're like, oh my god, what did you think about the finale and stuff like that. And I think because there was a bit of a plot twist at the end. But let's touch on the funeral first. Interesting because there was these callbacks to the previous seasons with like showing her previous outfits and stuff like that from, you know, finale episodes, just like her most notable, yeah, look from each season. Which I feel like I get it, they wanted them at the funeral, but I think that would have been better to see in a finale episode, like a series finale, which I mean, they left it on a cliffhanger that, I don't think this is a series finale, so I think I felt kind of questionable towards that, but I'm not mad at the idea of a funeral episode because of all the potential for all the gags, and they were funny. I mean, Elliot and Portia brought it. Of course they're gonna make it about them, like, and it was so good. It was so funny. I like, definitely was a good tone starter for the episode, you would think. While there was these gags and callbacks to other seasons, we brought back, you know, characters that we saw more in season 1 and 2, which was a delight, though again, wouldn't that be better for the series finale? I don't know. But then, I don't know, it got emotional at parts, a lot of parts, and got like pretty depressing, not gonna lie, like, and not even in the way that it was at the beginning of the season. It was different. It was more of a sad, depressing. Drew, like, breaking down as he played like that little ukulele cover. Like, I wanted to hold him so bad. Like, but it also became depressing when they were like thinking of what their life would have been if Dory was still around. And I feel like I was experiencing grief with them for a bit. It made me realize that I feel like there's just so many parts of the season that were pretty melancholic. I feel like this is the most overt example of it, but just especially with like Dory not even knowing a reason to get up in the morning, like at the beginning of episode 9, and of course, you know, the kidnapping, the trauma from the first half of the season. This was a pretty sad season, like pretty melancholic, especially for comedy. Like, geez, oh my gosh. I will say, with, you know, the plot twist at the end that she's alive, I'm glad she's alive, but now we're gonna have to go into the season. Dory's gonna have to is going into this part of her life where she just experienced a near-death experience. It isn't, this aspect doesn't give me hope that next season will be any less anxiety-inducing. But it's just, I think I was just left with, why did we put Dory through so much? And like, is this really gonna be the show now? Like, she just experienced a near-death experience. Like, that is big. She was already dealing with like a lot of trauma from the beginning, and then just like her own guilt for feeling like she got herself into this because she didn't escape when she could have. I definitely left. It felt like at the end of watching the season, melancholic towards the next season. At least maybe it will feel less jarring because we already went through a season that was kind of melancholic, but I don't know. But I do have some closing thoughts. So to wrap this up, let's talk about my favorite episodes. I'm gonna say episode 6 and episode 7. I really kind of enjoyed the middle of the season the most. Episode 6, that's when Dory becomes Stephanie, which was kind of fun to see that dynamic change and to just see something different in that dynamic where Dory wasn't struggling. But then the reintroducing Mark was hilarious. The whole sticky situation and Twitter exchange, hilarious. Episode 7, we get Susan Sarandon, and her addition to the show was just, it was so spot on, and such a great addition that added so much to that episode, especially when they kept going to the circle. That was hilarious. It was just funny how that like back and forth, little slapsticky, just a little bit, just tiny bit, but I love that aspect to it. So for my final thoughts on this season, I wanted to like it. It's not like I didn't like it, it's just I wanted to love it. I kept questioning the entire season why we have another season. Like, after each drop, and especially after the last drop, I feel like a new season's only as good as whatever new story or new thing, especially new thing, you have to add. If there's nothing really much to add, you kind of, I personally question why we're, you know, still going through this, especially with everything Dory went through. Like, how much was that necessary? And I noticed so many times in the season this reoccurring theme of searching for oneself, not knowing oneself, and so that's, I could see that is maybe how they're tying in that search party aspect again, is like abstract concepts, you know, who am I, what's my identity, and then of course literally finding Dory too. But I don't know how much it warranted another season. Generally like the idea of like them having to find Dory, and so it feels full circle. But I think it was her circumstances the most that tripped me up. So I just feel like plot-wise and moving things forward-wise, there was just too many parts that felt random to me, and I just don't know if it needed another season necessarily. Like, there were just too many missed opportunities, unfortunately. Like, for one, I feel like, as I described at the beginning, Search Party is a smart show. That's something that's become synonymous in my mind. They always had at least something to say. Even with season 3, and I kind of started feeling like the courtroom thing was a little random, a little bit, but they actually was saying something with that plot about like white privilege, and like in a way it's pretty privilege, and because these were just, you know, some like white hipsters from Brooklyn can get away with murder, basically. That's what they're trying to say. But so, and I feel like the past seasons were just so smart. So to have this season feel so lopsided is just unfortunate. I feel like even with this kidnapping plot, if they really wanted to go here, they could have said something more with it. I mean, Chip is this crazed fan who thinks he's best friends with Dory. I feel like that could have easily tied into a big theme or a statement about parasocial relationships, because all he knew from her, he thought he knew everything from her from just watching her on TV. Now that is actually where I thought the season was gonna go. Like the first 5 minutes watching the season, that's the theme that my mind instantly went to, and I was like, okay, they're back with the smart writing, they're gonna do parasocial. I don't know, like, not that like I'm disappointed they didn't do the specific theme in my head, but I feel like it was dangling right there. But instead they just opted to just take it to more of a horror genre, or like a horror mixed with thriller kind of genre, instead of trying to use the situation to say more. They tried to do it more with the identity thing. But I feel like, I don't know, I don't think it was enough for me. I don't think this discussion of identity was enough for me. Also because they didn't fully commit to it, too. So maybe that's more of a theme for season 5, which I would love to see. But yeah, it kind of fell flat for me. But despite all that, I will say it was a joy to watch the characters again, specifically the gang. For me, seeing the characters again and the performances was what brought this season's success to me. I don't know, I think that's what I got the biggest kick out of. That is why I kept tuning in every week, was because I knew the Drew, Portia, and Elliot were gonna be freaking hilarious. Like, and just to see that dynamic and just to see them struggle, because you know, like, they can't lead a search party. Like, Dory was clearly the head of that gang, season 1, when she was trying to find, you know, Chantal and everything. Like, you know, without her, they're lost. And it was so funny to wait. If you were just a fan of comedy in general, there's just so much talent on this show, on screen and also off screen. I mean, Jordan Firstman, I believe that's his name, the impressions guy on Instagram, if you didn't know, like, he produces it too. So just like, even behind the scenes, there's some cool people working on this show. So I think just as a comedy lover, it's a must watch. But, you know, as long as you're aware and are okay with more darker aspects, especially with this season in particular, and just knowing that you're gonna have maybe some gut-wrenching reactions in between as you're belly laughing too, you know, just something to consider, you know? Just, yeah, your stomach's gonna go places with this show, with this season specifically. But yeah, so with all that being said, to conclude, I'm going to give the season a 5 out of 10. But thanks for watching. This is, I mean, I just started doing this thing, but it's so much fun to do, to record, to think about TV even in a deeper way than I was already thinking about it. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. I'm so excited for all the things I'm going to watch. There's going to be reviews, there's going to be some other kind of content too, as you probably saw with the Golden Globes video. That was in a review, but I guess it was a review of the Golden Globes. So yeah, so I guess I'll see you in the next video, whatever that's gonna be. And yeah, thanks for peeping.